Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Supernatural, Ladies Drink Free. And this is another great episode that's kind of like filler and actually advancing what's going on, in this case, British Men of Letters. So, the episode starts out, and we see this young girl leaving from the bar, and she's like texting someone, and then this guy comes up behind her, and it's like, you know what, you shouldn't be going to this bar, and you shouldn't be out alone, so let's go home. So they're walking in the woods and everything, and they start hearing like animal noises, and the young guy goes to investigate and just show that it's an animal, and of course the girl's like, sucker, and just going back to the bar when she gets attacked. And he's like, holy crap, runs, sees her on the ground, and then turns around, and he gets pretty much impaled by this creature. And it was just with a claw, not with like any kind of weapon or anything. It's like, holy crap. So, then we go to Sam and Dean waiting at the British Men of Letters HQ, and Dean's kind of pissed off, like, he's late, he calls us here. This is stupid. So he's like going towards the door, and of course Mick's like, sorry I'm late, we got like a werewolf case, here are the kind of details. They look through, and then Dean's like, well, this should be a milk run. And Mick's like, well then, you shouldn't mind if I tag along with you. And of course, like, Dean's like, you're inexperienced, you don't know what to do, which of course we've seen with the whole Alpha attack. And he's like, alright, you can come, but Sam's your babysitter. So, they go driving off, and they're of course listening to lore and everything, and like this podcast, Mick's kind of telling them how much he knows about werewolves, about like the 16th century, and like Martin Luther being like one of the first hunters, and all that. And it was kind of cool to kind of get his mindset and everything, and see Dean kind of be irritated. And then they pull up to where they're going to be staying, and Mick's like, sorry gents, all I can find is 3 stars, so we'll have our rooms and everything. We all got suites, so we're all good. And Dean's like, holy crap. He's like, Sam, take my bags. And then you see him grabbing fistfuls of like mints out of this bowl and stuffing them in his pockets. It was great. And then they wake up the next morning, and like, Dean's like, dude, they spoiled us. The beds, chocolates on the pillows. I went for a swim today. And he's like, you brought your swim trunks? He's like, nope. And Sam's just like, oh god, no. And he's like, don't tell Mick. No, I'm not going to give him the satisfaction. He's like, alright, everybody sleep alright? Let's get to it. So, they drive off, and they get to the hospital, and of course they're about to go in, and Sam and Dean are like, just stay out here, Mick. You don't know how to deal with a grieving family. We got this. So they go in, and they're like, talking to the mother, and be like, can we talk to your daughter real quick to see what happened and all that? And she's like, no, she's resting. Screw off, pretty much. And then, of course, Mick comes in and kind of like diffuses the situation a little bit, dressed as a doctor, and is like examining the daughter. And then, of course, Sam, Dean, and the mother go outside, and he starts examining her and finds out that she's bit. And of course, this is interesting because Mick, up until this point, has followed the strict Men of Letters code, which is pretty much kill anything that you think is a monster, no matter if it's good or not. So we're kind of waiting to see where this kind of leads. So Sam and Dean are kind of talking with the mom, kind of like, she's kind of apologizing and saying that she's had her son dead, her daughter's in the hospital, and it's just all a lot, and that there's this person from the Fish and Wildlife that had come by, barely older than her daughter, blonde with a bad attitude, and of course that puts Sam and Dean into, Claire. And she gives them her card and all that. It's like, okay. And then, of course, it comes out and does not say that the daughter, Hayden, is bit. So, they get in contact with Claire because she's, like, texting Jody, who thinks that she's, like, looking at colleges and all that kind of stuff, and digs around. And, of course, we get the Dean typical answer. And then they start kind of talking at the hotel, kind of getting the idea of what's going on. She tells them that the daughter was using fake IDs and going to this bar and all that, and had an older boyfriend who's pretty obsessive. So it's like, okay, we're gonna have to check out this bar and everything. And it's interesting seeing this going on because Mick had gotten beers for everyone. Claire almost went for one. He's like, no. Mick's drinking the beer was like, ugh. And then he's like, alright, I'm gonna turn in early. I gotta do a report and all that. It's like, okay. And at first I didn't really think much of this. It's like, okay. So they kind of get where they need to go, like, okay, we're gonna have to figure this out. And we find out that Mick had gone to the hospital to kill Hayden. And he's got like this syringe and everything saying that he's sorry and was about to inject it into the IV when she wolfs out and starts attacking him and all that. And he really has a hard time of trying to fend her off and everything. And of course gets her on the ground and stabs her with silver nitrate, killing her. And this really gets interesting because then everybody like goes to the hospital and they're like, it's kind of weird. She doesn't have any wounds. And of course the doctor's like talking about it. It's like really weird that she's died like this. I mean, yeah, could be a heart attack, but that's really uncommon for someone that's young. So the doctor leaves and they're like spitballing ideas. Claire's like, she obviously had to turn because her wounds are gone. How did she die though? That's the kind of weird thing. And Dean hits in on Mick, who's saying, well, you said she wasn't bit. It's like, I'm not 100% sure that she wasn't bit. It's like, okay, that's not cool, man. You and me, you two follow out what you need to. So they split up. Sam and Claire go off to kind of like talk with Hayden's BFF to kind of get more on the whole situation with Hayden and her boyfriend. So they go to the bar, and of course they start hitting the one bartender, and he's like, oh, you want us to tell the establishment that you're serving underage people? And it's like, I really need this job. There's the dude. And of course, it's like this tattooed dude. It's like, no, there wasn't anything going on with us. And it's like, okay, that's kind of weird. But he's like, well, she's hot, but like, no, there's nothing going on. And of course, he was also one that had hit on Claire. And he's like, okay, but here's the thing. You touch her again, I kill you. And then of course, Dean being like that big brother kind of thing, Claire, and also like Charlie really works out because it just fleshes out his character more. That he takes that kind of big brother role, not just for Sammy, but like the other people around in his life too. He wants to be a protector, even if they don't really need protecting. It's just his trait, and it's cool to see more of that going on here. And of course, Dean's hitting on Mick for all the stuff, and he's like, what do you want me to do? And all that. It's like, jeez. So, we get into it, and because he figures out that the only way for her to die would have been for someone to kill her. And Dean, of course, had figured this out pretty much, and they're like, not all monsters are monsters. And sometimes it's more black and white, because they had read stuff about curing a werewolf. And that was in the lore that they were looking at, about like using the blood of the sire and all that. But, of course, Mick has to follow orders and everything. And of course, you see Dean getting onto his injured shoulder and all that. And it's just seeing Mick kind of squirm under it. He's not used to doing stuff in the field. He's usually removed from it. He's not the one making he makes the call, but he doesn't have to carry out the call. And it's just like really effective seeing Dean doing that. I mean, like calling him on his shit and saying, listen, sometimes you don't have to kill the monster. We've had friends that have been monsters, like Garth. He's a perfectly great werewolf. This was, of course, in the car. And he's like, you actually trust him? It's like, yeah. And Mick just doesn't get that. He's like, if it's a monster, it's a monster. You gotta kill it. So we then also see Sam and Claire going to the high school, and of course Claire's like, no, these people won't talk to an old geezer like you. Let me go and do my thing. And of course she does, and comes back and talks to Sam and like gets all the lowdown on her, and like how the boyfriend was obsessive and everything, and really clingy and all that. And then he gets into her like, have you talked to Jody? Have you told Jody that this is going on? It's like, no. And he's like, you really have to. It's like, stop dive bombing my life and all that and getting into my crap. And he's like, stop treating me. She's like, stop treating me like a stupid child. And he's like, well, stop acting like one. And of course she huffs off and goes and gets bit by the same werewolf. And that's why you hunt in pairs. Because there's a kind of pivotal thing with going on with Claire here. Granted, I do like that she's kind of going in the hunter kind of role, kind of like set up for a new kind of generation kind of thing. But she's got that kind of arrogance that she can do all this stuff on her own, and that, yes, she's been through some things, but that doesn't mean that she has the abilities that Sam and Dean have. And I'm not talking about, like, any kind of supernatural kind of stuff. I'm talking about, like, understanding and having her reflexes honed to such a degree that she would be able to deal with any kind of supernatural situation that's popped up. I mean, yes, she has done good hunts and on powerful beings, but being a hunter is more than just knowing how to take out a hunter. It's going into a situation and going into your surroundings and knowing kind of where everything's at. Now, granted, that doesn't happen to Sam and Dean all the time. They get their asses kicked even when they know what's going on, which is just more pivotal for Claire to realize she doesn't know everything, and she's just gonna have to take time to build up to that hunter status. You need friends, you need lore, you need that information to understand what's going on, which of course led to her kind of storming off with her emotions and getting bit. And of course, this enters a situation. It's like, don't worry, Claire, we'll get through all this. And of course, Mick's like, well, we're gonna have to kill her or whatnot. But he doesn't want to go to that yet because he knows Sam and Dean will not go for that. And of course, Sam's like, well, let's do this whole blood thing. Let's try and use this cure. And Mick's like, well, we only did it in mice. It wasn't that effective, and we got to do it before she like transforms and eats. Otherwise, the success rate is 0. We've never done it with a human before, other than to test it, and they died in agony. And of course, Claire's like, listen, we either try this cure or you kill me, because you can't live like this. And it's kind of interesting seeing her and everybody in that kind of situation. Dean going in the protective route, like, no, you won't kill yourself. We'll try to do this cure, and if all else fails, you can live with this. It's not a death sentence. And it's just really good to kind of see that side of Dean again and just have it reinforced, because you get to see a lot of good character moments of Sam doing the lore and being like, listen, you can do this stuff. Dean being like, listen, we can get you through this. And seeing Claire being like, I don't want to live like this. Setting that up. So, of course, Sam and Dean go off to try and get who they think is the werewolf in the bar. And they find out that it's not them, not him. And Mick and Claire get attacked. And they were all kind of figuring out, why was Hayden left alive? Why was she bit? And, of course, the werewolf comes in, drags Claire, and we find out that it is the first bartender that they talked to. And this is where we start getting into some good things, because this directly deals with the consequences of the British men of letters and their strategy going through America. This werewolf's pack was all killed. They were peaceful, they weren't really hurting anybody, and this whole pack was pretty much killed. And what he's trying to do is get a new pack. He wants that companionship. And it's going to that kind of edge where he's got to kill to stay alive. It's us or them kind of mentality. And that is the biggest weakness of the men of letters. Yes, they've got technology. Yes, they can take out things brutally effectively. But that means that those monsters will fight just as hard because you are going to annihilate them. The best part of like the hunters in America is that some of them have the foresight to be like, listen, if you are just a regular person, yes, you might be a monster, but it's not what you are, it's who you choose to be and the actions you do. And of course, if you visit this upon monsters, they will just go with their nature. They will let loose their basic instinct to survive, just like anybody would. It's kind of that old adage of the abyss. You stare in the abyss stares into you. You fight darkness on this kind of dark terms. Don't you kind of become it? So, of course, we're seeing him trying to force Claire to eat a heart and all that and become a full werewolf. And, of course, she spits out on him and tells him to screw off. And then, of course, Sam and Dean and Mick come in. Sam tackles the werewolf guy, and we see Claire pretty much turn into a werewolf. Now, granted, she hasn't fed because she spat out the heart. And, of course, Dean had to, like, knock her down a little bit. And they were able to kill the werewolf, get his blood, and inject it into Claire. And, of course, it's a very big process. And she is able to beat it and become human again. And it's kind of cool in seeing Mick kind of learn this kind of stuff. Because, of course, in the beginning, when Dean was talking to him about like monsters and all that, he brought up the case of the psychic woman, who of course Ketch had killed. And of course that's going through Mick's mind as well. And seeing this kind of change, we'll have to see what happens with Mick if he will side with the Winchesters, if it comes to this. And seeing them kind of like be like, okay, there are better ways, it worked out this time, this is great. But we see that Claire has obviously learned nothing. She calls Jody, tells her that she's been hunting and will continue to hunt alone. She has not learned that she needs help doing this. This is not just a one-person show. If you go out like that and go a kind of vengeance route, you're just going to walk into your own grave. Because that's what she would have been in if the Winchesters had not been around. And that's where I'm kind of like on her character. I'm interested to see if they will get her to learn stuff as she's going along, but I'm willing to see where they go with her. I like her character, and I kind of like that she needs to learn this stuff. And if this is going to be like years, and she's going to be a good reoccurring character like that, which I hope they do, because sadly there's few reoccurring characters that survive a couple years on this show, because it's like, Sam and Dean, we need to keep. Everybody else is fair game. Bobby, all of them. So I hope that we get a good, nice character arc out of her before they kill her. It's probably going to happen, depending upon how it goes, but I would like her to be more of a kind of new age hunter, and kind of almost, if this keeps going on longer, have Sam and Dean kind of go to the route of kind of Bobby and mentoring other hunters eventually. And that would be pretty cool. So, those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.